Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever had that moment in the quiet aftermath of a conversation where you replay everything you said to her? Not because you regret it, but because something in her face changed, the light dimmed, the spark softened, you felt it, you noticed it, but you couldn't quite name it. Intelligent men who think deeply, who love intentionally, who try, often find themselves confused, not because they're incapable, but because they're unaware of the emotional landmines they accidentally step on. And here's the secret. Women rarely tell you when you've crossed one. They simply feel it, store it, and begin to step away, not out of malice, but out of self-protection. You may be confident, you may be accomplished, you may even be the guy that friends call solid, but relationships don't unravel because of one big mistake. They slip through your fingers because of 9 small ones, subtle, repeated, and often invisible, until it's too late. In this video, we're not going to bash you or shame you. This is a space of curiosity, not criticism. We're going to talk about what intelligent men do differently, not to manipulate, not to perform, but to build love that lasts with presence, passion, and truth. So lean in, get comfortable. We're about to dive into a conversation most men never get to have, but absolutely need to. And it starts right now. Let's begin with something familiar. You're sitting across from her, maybe at dinner, maybe on the couch, maybe in bed with the moonlight catching her cheek, and you're talking. She's listening, she nods, she even smiles. But something's missing, the connection, the fire, the sense that she's with you. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, sensually, has dulled. And you wonder what happened. She hasn't said anything's wrong. You haven't done anything dramatically stupid. There was no argument, no betrayal, no storm, just distance. A softness that's turned into silence. And if you're like many men I've spoken to, men who are thoughtful, successful, self-aware, you start to think, am I not enough? Did I do something wrong? Or is this just how women are? Confusing, distant, moody. But what if I told you that the problem isn't about who you are, but about the things you've been conditioned not to see? You see, intelligence in men is often praised when it shows up in business, in logic, in decisions. But in relationships, intelligence has to evolve into something more fluid. Emotional nuance, subtlety, timing, presence. And sometimes the smarter a man is intellectually, the more prone he is to missing these finer points of connection because they don't announce themselves with logic. They whisper in energy, in rhythm, in emotion. So today we're talking about 9 mistakes intelligent men avoid, not because they're flawless, but because they've learned how to see what others miss. And that is where the magic begins. Let's begin with something that feels small, but echoes loudly in her heart. Too many men confuse listening with waiting to speak. You think you're paying attention. You hear her words. You remember what she said. Maybe you even repeat her words back to prove you were tuned in. But she doesn't feel heard. Why? Because you're listening from the surface, not the soul. You're hearing facts. She's expressing feelings. You're offering solutions. She's revealing herself. You see, women don't want a courtroom or a fix-it shop when they open up. They want resonance, empathy. They want to feel you feeling them, not managing them, not correcting them, not putting their words in a neat little box that makes you feel in control. When she says, I had a hard day, the most intelligent thing you can do isn't to offer strategies or suggest what she could have done better. It's to slow down, breathe with her, and ask, do you want me to just listen right now, or do you want my thoughts? That one question changes the entire dynamic. It gives her choice. It gives you presence. It makes her feel seen. The second mistake, just as subtle, just as dangerous, is this: intelligent men often try to protect their vulnerability with performance. You show up well, you're accomplished, you're reliable, you provide. And yet something is held back. Not because you're cold, but because somewhere along the way, you learn that love is something you earn by being useful, not by being known. So you lead with your resume, your competence, your opinions, your accomplishments. But here's the heartbreak: women fall for the man who lets them in, not just the one who looks good on paper. If you keep her at a distance emotionally, if you don't reveal your fears, your wounds, your doubts, she might respect you, but she won't feel safe with you. And when a woman doesn't feel emotionally safe, intimacy becomes effortful, mechanical, eventually absent. You might think, I don't want to burden her with my emotions. I need to be strong. But strength is not the absence of feeling. It's the courage to be seen. To say, I'm figuring things out. Or, sometimes I don't know if I'm enough. Not in a way that turns her into your therapist, but in a way that lets her meet you on the inside, where love is real, where love lives. And here's the beautiful paradox: when a man drops the performance and reveals his truth, his attraction doesn't drop, it skyrockets. Because now she's not just with a provider or a protector. She's with a partner, a man who lets her in, not just on. There's a difference, which brings me to something a little more tender, something many intelligent men never realize until it's too late. You may be doing everything right. You plan the date, you remember her coffee order, you pick her up when her car breaks down, you show up, you support, you solve, and yet, one night, she says the words that hit you like a freight train: I don't feel connected to you anymore. And it stings, doesn't it? Because you think, what more do you want? I give so much. But what you've been giving is what you're good at, not necessarily what she needs. You've been speaking your love language, not hers. Love, my friend, isn't about effort, it's about accuracy. And accuracy starts with attunement, emotional precision, noticing the tone in her voice when she says, it's fine, hearing the space between her words, asking what lights her up instead of assuming you already know. It's about shifting from, how do I show love, to how does she receive love? Sometimes, intelligent men think of relationships like a checklist. Romance, check. Communication, support, check. But love doesn't thrive in checklists. It thrives in curiosity. A man who is curious about his woman, not just who she was at the start, but who she's becoming every day, is a man who stays connected to her heart, because she doesn't want to be understood once. She wants to be discovered continuously. And discovery only happens when you slow down, when you stop trying to win her, when you stop assuming you already have her figured out. Because no woman wants to be a solved equation. She wants to be a living poem, read with reverence, not rushed with answers. She wants to feel like you're with her, not just beside her. And maybe that's where we begin to shift from achievement to intimacy, from knowing to wondering, from leading to dancing, from how do I keep her to how do I join her? Because the most intelligent men, the ones who avoid these subtle mistakes, aren't the ones who get everything right. They're the ones who stay present. They notice, they adjust, they ask, they evolve. And that's what makes them unforgettable. There's a moment that happens in almost every long-term connection. It sneaks in quietly. You're sitting across from her, and for the first time in a long time, you notice that you're not really looking at each other anymore. You see her face, but not her mood. You hear her voice, but not her meaning. The space between you is still filled with kindness, maybe even affection, but the electricity has dimmed. And this is where the third mistake lies, one that even the most intelligent men make. It's the belief that consistency is enough. Let me explain. Consistency is essential, of course, but routine is not the same as intimacy. You can do the groceries together every Sunday, walk the dog, kiss goodnight, and still feel like strangers in a beautifully organized life. Why? Because what's missing isn't function. It's play. It's mystery. It's the unexpected glance across the table that says, I still choose you. It's the brush of a hand, the teasing remark, the curiosity that asks, what part of you have I not yet discovered? Many men fall into kind of emotional autopilot. You're reliable. You show up, you stay loyal, but you stop flirting, not just with her body, but with her soul. And when that stops, she stops responding, not because she's fallen out of love, but because the part of her that longs to be awakened has gone dormant. You see, women are not looking for stability instead of excitement. They're craving both. The emotional safety to rest and the emotional spark to feel alive. That's the dance. That's what keeps her close. Not grand romantic gestures, not expensive trips, but the small unexpected moments that remind her, you still see me, and I still surprise you. This is not about becoming someone you're not. It's about returning to the version of you that was present in the beginning. The one who noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The one who paid attention to the way her eyes widened when she talked about her dreams. The one who reached for her hand, not just out of habit, but out of desire. Because when she feels desired, when she feels pursued, not out of obligation, but out of pleasure, everything changes. The walls soften, the energy returns, the intimacy deepens. And that leads us to the next place. Intelligent men often stumble. You stop being a mystery. Now I know it sounds counterintuitive. You're told to be transparent, to communicate, to be emotionally available. And yes, that's all vital. But availability doesn't mean predictability. There's a version of you that gets lost when you become too defined by the relationship. You stop cultivating your own life, your own passions. You become accessible, but not magnetic. Because here's something no one tells you about long-term desire. It thrives in space. Not distance, not disconnection, but space. The space to miss each other, to witness each other in different lights, to be surprised by the otherness of the person you love. When a man loses his edge, not the kind that intimidates, but the kind that intrigues, he becomes flat in her emotional landscape. She knows what you'll say before you say it. She knows how you'll react. She knows where you'll be. And while that might feel like stability, it slowly starves desire. Intelligent men avoid this by remaining in touch with their own inner fire. They create, explore, engage with the world, not for approval, not for ego, but because it feeds their spirit. And that spirit, it's irresistible, not because it's loud, but because it's alive. Women want to feel like you are your own man, that you choose her not because you need her, but because you desire her. And desire, my dear friend, only survives when two people remain whole. This doesn't mean being emotionally distant. It means being emotionally sovereign, that you have a life she can step into, not a life that revolves entirely around her, that she gets to witness your growth, your process, your unfolding, not manage it. Which brings us to a mistake that's painful, because it often comes from the right place, but leads to the wrong result. You try to fix her feelings. She's upset. She's hurt. She's frustrated. And because you care, you want to help. You explain, you rationalize, you tell her she's overthinking, you remind her that it's not that bad, that she misunderstood, that you didn't mean it like that, and while all of this may be factually true, it emotionally fails her. Because when a woman is in pain, when she's confused or angry or raw, what she needs first is not for you to solve her pain, but to sit with her in it, to say, I get it, that would hurt me too. Oh, I see why you feel that way. She wants to feel like you understand her world, not like you're trying to pull her out of it, because it makes you uncomfortable. Intelligent men avoid this mistake by mastering the art of emotional containment. They know that their partner's pain is not a threat, it's an invitation, an opportunity to show up not with answers, but with presence. And presence says, I'm not afraid of how you feel. I'm not trying to rush you out of it. I'm here with you. Fully, because once she feels held in that space, once she knows you get her, the need for defense drops, the conflict transforms, connection becomes possible again. You see, we often think emotional strength looks like control, but in intimacy, strength is the willingness to enter her experience, even when it's messy, especially when it's messy, because that's where trust is born, and trust is everything. It's the quiet certainty that allows her to let go in your arms. It's the inner whisper that says, he sees me even when I'm not at my best, especially then. But here's the final piece I want to leave you with today. A subtle, invisible mistake that unravels more relationships than any other. It's when a man starts to believe that being loved is enough and stops doing the work of being loving. Because love is not a status. It's not a thing you achieve and then coast on. It's a verb, a rhythm, a choice you make every day in how you speak, how you touch, how you show up. The most intelligent men don't rest on, she knows I love her. They live it. With their eyes, their tone, their attention. Because she will feel it. Women always do. So don't assume. Don't wait. Don't let familiarity turn into forgetfulness. Stay curious. Stay engaged. Stay in motion, not to win her, but to keep discovering her. Over and over again. That is what keeps the heart open. That is what keeps the connection alive. That is what makes you unforgettable. There's a quiet moment late at night when the world has gone still and you're lying there next to her. Maybe her back is turned. Maybe her hand rests on your chest. You can hear her breathing, steady, calm, but you can't feel the closeness you once did. Not because she's physically far, but because emotionally something's changed. You begin to wonder, is this just what happens in long relationships? Is this the normal fading of love? Or is there something I missed along the way? And this is where we arrive at the next critical moment. The mistake of assuming that time together means connection. That just because you share a home, a routine, a history, you are still emotionally bonded. But here's what the most emotionally intelligent men understand. Proximity is not presence. Just because you're in the same room doesn't mean you're in each other's world. Connection takes intention. You don't grow closer by default. You grow closer by design. And the design, it's simple but powerful. Ask deeper questions. Not just, how was your day? But what part of today made you feel most alive? Not, are you okay? But what's weighing on your heart that you haven't said out loud? These aren't grand romantic gestures. They're emotional doorways. And when you open those doors, even just a little, she walks through them with trust. Because now she feels something rare. She feels you're not just checking in, you're tuning in. And that changes everything. Another place where men often stumble, even the most emotionally sharp ones, is in how they respond to change. You fell for her as she was. Maybe she was spontaneous, curious, fun. Maybe she had a dream of fire, but now life has shaped her differently. She's tired, she's uncertain, she's evolving, and rather than embrace this new version of her, many men resist. You try to pull her back to who she was, not realizing that what she needs now is permission to become who she is becoming. Intelligent men avoid this mistake because they understand love is not about loving the version of her that fit your story. Love is about being present for the version of her that's unfolding, even when it scares you, even when it changes the rules you got used to. And here's the truth, when a woman feels supported through her becoming, she doesn't pull away. She expands. She brings more of herself to the relationship. She trusts you with more of her truth, her depth, her wildness, not because you forced it, but because you made space for it. And that's what mature intimacy really is. It's not about keeping things the same. It's about growing in the same direction, even if the path surprises you. Now let me speak to something that's hard, because it lives in a place most men don't want to go. And it's this, the mistake of withholding your own needs out of pride. You're strong. You've been through things. You've survived without leaning on anyone. And so when you're in relationship, you keep that armor on. You want to seem unbothered, self-contained, maybe even stoic. But slowly that armor becomes a wall and you stop expressing what you actually need. You tell her everything's fine. You avoid confrontation. You minimize your desires, not because you're lying, but because you've learned to silence yourself, to keep the peace, to not appear too much. And here's what happens next. She feels something's missing, but she doesn't know what. She feels like you're there, but not with her. And she starts to carry the emotional labor alone, trying to guess what's going on, trying to lead the connection, trying to fix what feels off. And in that imbalance, intimacy starts to erode. The intelligent man doesn't fall into this trap because he's not afraid to say, I need more closeness. Or, I feel disconnected lately and I don't want to drift. He doesn't confuse independence with emotional suppression. He knows that asking for closeness or touch or understanding isn't weakness, it's intimacy. And here's the paradox: when you show your need, not from desperation but from clarity, you actually lead the relationship with strength. Because now, she feels like she's loving a real man, not a mask, not a shell, but someone alive, available, invested. And finally, we reach the deepest thread in all of this. The invisible heartbeat that runs through every mistake we've explored. The tendency, often unconscious, to treat love like a transaction. You do this, she does that. You offer stability, she offers affection. You show up, she gives respect. It becomes a quiet scorecard, even when you don't mean for it to. But here's the truth no one teaches us growing up: love that thrives is not a ledger. It's not a contract of duties, it's a flow. Yes, reciprocity matters, but the most intelligent men aren't obsessed with keeping things even. They're invested in keeping things alive. They give not to earn, but to express. They speak not to control, but to connect. They listen not to correct, but to understand. And when that is the energy, the pulse of your relationship, it becomes a sanctuary. A place where both people soften, where both people expand, where both people come home. So if you've made these mistakes, welcome. You're human. We all start here. But now you know. And knowing is the beginning of changing. So take this not as criticism, but as a call to become more emotionally present, more curious, more real. Because the truth is, women don't need perfect men. They need aware men, men who notice, men who evolve, men who love not just with effort, but with intention. And if that's you, or if that's who you're willing to become, you will not only keep the love you want, you'll make it deeper, richer, stronger. The kind of love that lasts, not because it avoids hardship, because it walks through it hand in hand. And that is the beauty of emotional intelligence. It's not a trick, it's a way of being. One that changes how she sees you, how she trusts you, how she opens to you again and again. So thank you for being here, for listening, for choosing to learn what most men never do. And if this touched something in you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me which moment resonated, what part of you woke up. If you found value in this, give it a like, share it with a man you care about. And if you want more content like this, real, raw, relationship changing, subscribe to this channel. We're just getting started. Here's to loving better, deeper, wiser. You've got this. It's interesting, isn't it? How so much of what breaks love is invisible. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't always come crashing down. More often, it fades quietly, moment by moment, misunderstanding by misunderstanding, until one day you're no longer sure how you got so far from where you started. And so here's something I want you to really take in. One of the biggest mistakes intelligent men avoid is forgetting to see her now. Not who she was when you first met, not the woman in the memory, but the woman in front of you today, the one with new fears, new longings, new wrinkles, new wisdom, the one who has grown not always in ways you expected, not always in ways you understand, but grown nonetheless. When you stop seeing her, she starts to disappear, not in the literal sense, but emotionally. Her eyes dim, her voice softens, her energy pulls back, and you think she's changing, but really, she's just trying to exist in a space where she doesn't feel noticed anymore. What makes a man emotionally intelligent is not his ability to predict her every move. It's his willingness to witness her as she is now, to say, I see you're not laughing as much lately. What's been on your heart? Or, I noticed you've been quiet this week. You don't have to tell me everything, but I want you to know I'm here. She doesn't always need answers. She needs your attention. And attention is love's most powerful form of devotion. Because when you truly see her, when you observe the small shifts, when you pay attention to the tension in her shoulders, the tone of her silence, she feels safe again. Not because you're fixing anything, but because you're present. And presence, it heals more than any solution ever could. Now, I want to bring you into a mistake that's difficult to recognize, especially for high-achieving men. It's the moment when you begin to confuse providing with loving. You work hard. You make sure the bills are paid, the fridge is full, the roof doesn't leak. You've built a life, a safe one, a good one. And in your mind, you think, this is how I show love. I protect, I provide, I take care of things. And listen, there is deep value in that. It matters. But when that becomes your primary way of expressing love, she starts to feel more like a dependent and less like a partner. She doesn't want to be just provided for. She wants to be poured into. She wants emotional presence, not just financial support. And too many men hide behind provision, not because they're withholding love intentionally, but because vulnerability feels unfamiliar. Because in the world of men, success and stability are often the only languages they were ever taught. But here's what I want you to remember. What she really wants is you, your presence, your energy, your inner world. The parts of you that don't come with a paycheck or a schedule, because when you bring that into the relationship, when you offer her not just protection, but emotional nourishment, she doesn't just feel safe. She feels cherished. She feels like a woman again, not just a wife or a co-parent or a roommate, but a woman fully alive, fully felt. That feeling, it's sacred, and it only comes when the man beside her opens. Not his wallet, but his heart. Now we're going to talk about something most couples avoid until it's too late, and that is conflict. There's a difference between intelligent men and emotionally intelligent men. The former knows how to win arguments. The latter knows how to transform them. Many men believe that peace is the absence of conflict. That if they just stay quiet, not agree, or deflect, they'll keep the relationship smooth. No waves, no drama. But here's the truth. Avoiding conflict doesn't create peace. It creates distance. It creates tension that builds under the surface until one day she erupts or shuts down or walks away. Conflict, when approached consciously, is not destruction, it's invitation. It's a doorway into understanding each other more deeply. It's a signal that something inside one or both of you needs to be heard. So the intelligent man doesn't run from these moments. He doesn't become defensive. He doesn't minimize her pain or get stuck in proving his point. He listens deeply, not just to her words, but to what those words represent. Because often underneath her anger is hurt, underneath her silence is fear, underneath her criticism is a need for closeness. And when you respond to her need, not just her behavior, everything changes. You go from being opponents in a fight to partners in healing. And that, my dear friend, is where love deepens. Not in the moments when everything is easy, but in the moments when it's not, and you choose to lean in anyway. So many relationships don't fall apart from the big betrayals. They die from emotional starvation, from going days, weeks, months without truly touching each other's hearts. Not physical-emotionally. And the emotionally intelligent man knows if we want this love to last, we have to feed it daily, not with grand declarations, but with small, intentional acts of connection. A kiss that lingers just 2 seconds longer, a moment of stillness before you rush out the door. How are you really? After a long day, that's what she remembers. That's what fills the space. That's what brings her back to you, even after the storms, even after the silence, even after the stretch of distance. And when you get that right, not perfectly, but consistently, you don't just keep the relationship alive, you keep it vibrant, you keep it sacred. You become not the man who tried to be perfect, but the man who chose to be present. That, in the end, is what she will never forget. Let's pause for a moment. Breathe with me. You've made it this far, not just in this video, but in your life, through heartbreaks, through victories, through nights where you wondered if you'd ever understand women at all, through mornings where you promised yourself you'd do better, be better, love better. And that's where I want to meet you now. Not in critique, but in compassion, because if you're watching this, I already know something important about you. You care. You don't want to just be the kind of man who gets the girl. You want to be the man who keeps her heart. You want to be remembered not for what you had, but for how you made her feel. And that starts with this final truth. The 9th mistake intelligent men avoid, perhaps the most painful of them all, is disconnecting from their own capacity for romance. Not the Hollywood kind, not the dozen roses candlelit dinner kind, but the soul-level romance, the kind that speaks in quiet gestures, in how you look at her when she's not looking, in how you soften your voice when she's vulnerable, in how you make her feel chosen. Even on your most ordinary day, somewhere along the line, many men abandon that part of themselves. They get practical, predictable, productive. And yes, that brings order, that brings structure. But romance, true, intentional romance, is what brings her back to the parts of herself that only you awaken. And don't get it twisted, romance is not about being someone else. It's about bringing the most attentive version of you to the surface. Romance is remembering her story and reflecting it back to her. It's making her feel beautiful, not just when she's dressed up, but when she's in a hoodie, tired, hair messy and vulnerable. It's being a witness to her in all her seasons. Because when a woman feels adored, not just needed, not just appreciated, but adored, she becomes magnetic, she radiates. And she doesn't just love you, she wants you over and over again. That's the secret intelligent men understand. Love is not sustained by logic alone. It is breathed into life by emotion, by energy, by effort that comes from the desire to make her feel unforgettable. Not because you have to, because you want to. So let me ask you now, man to man, heart to heart, where have you gone numb? Where have you settled into comfort when what your relationship needs is courage? Where have you allowed the spark to flicker because you forgot you hold the match? And what would it look like to change that today? What would it mean to send her a message just to say, I thought about you today, and I realized I've been taking your presence for granted. You matter deeply. What would it shift if you walked into the next room, not with a task, not with a plan, but with your arms open, ready to hold her like she was still the one you were falling in love with for the first time? Because here's the truth, my friend Dowie. You still can. You can always begin again. You can always choose to see her again, to hear her again, to flirt with her again, to admire her again. You can reignite what you thought was lost, not with perfection, but with presence. That's the power you carry, not in your wallet, not in your title, not in your achievements, but in your attention. And the man who masters that, he becomes unforgettable because he's not just intelligent, he's emotionally fluent. And emotional fluency is the language of lasting love. So if you've made these mistakes, let me tell you something important. You're not broken. You're not too late. You're not behind. You're becoming the kind of man who feels before he fixes, who notices before he assumes, who leads not with dominance, but with depth. And that, my dear listener, is rare. So keep going, keep learning, keep loving better, not harder, not louder, not grander, just better. Because the truth is, every woman, no matter how strong, no matter how independent, wants to feel one thing above all else: chosen, not for what she does, but for who she is. And you, my friend, hold that power. The power to choose her again, the power to see her again, the power to become the kind of man who never stops showing up. So if this video resonated with you, if something in your chest stirred, if you thought of her, don't let this just be inspiration. Let it be a turning point. Drop a comment below. Tell me what moved you, what you're taking with you, what you'll change. And if this felt like truth, raw, real, needed, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with a man who's ready to stop guessing and start growing. We're building a community here, not of perfection, but of presence, not of domination, but of devotion, not of shallow games, but of sacred connection. This is the place where men become emotionally powerful and women feel seen again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, not just with your ears, but with your soul. Now go make her feel like the woman she longs to be, not someday, but tonight.